Everyone, welcome. Please sit down. We hope you're all going to come back tonight and join us for our cantata to raise funds for the food grains. Ross, where are you? Are you going to talk about the envelope issue? Or?
Well, maybe Meg will.
Pardon?
Maybe Meg will.
I don't know when she's coming back. No? Okay, we'll just go on.
No, I'm all right. Now we'll.
All right. Okay. What other announcements do we have? Oh, Sandy, come on up.
Steve isn't here today, but I'd like, on her behalf, I'd like to thank everybody that helped clean this church. And I don't know if you noticed or not, it smells really nice, and it was really dirty and dusty. And the M&S cleaned the parlor the other day, and I had a little problem with the curtains. It looked like a lion has been in there and shredded all the curtains. So we've got 9 candles of porcine or whatever. Anyway, I don't know if everybody knows Liz lost her little grandson the other day. So that's probably why she's not here. So let's all pray for Liz and help me out. Let's do it.
Maybe gather. Thanks very much. What other announcements do we have? Oh, thank you. So in your bulletin is the order form for poinsettias and evergreen centerpieces to support the Christian Ed team. The last day to order will be next Sunday. If you look there, if you have any questions, then you can come see me. And these are, we place them in honor or in memory of loved ones in the sanctuary Christmas, and also just to decorate your home so you don't have to place them, or you can place them as gifts. If you, I'll collect orders after church today, or you can put them in the IT mailbox. I just ask the last day that you do that will be next Sunday, the 1st, so that I can get our orders sent in and have everything arrive when it's intended to. Just read through it. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks. Thanks, Karen. Are there any other announcements? Oh, Alan, do you want to?
Good morning, everybody. Next Saturday is the men's breakfast at 9 o'clock. All the men of the church are welcome to come. Also, I have something else I'd like to say. We are so fortunate to have so many talented people at our church. Last week, when Reverend Meg couldn't get here, Beth and the choir filled in with very short notice, and they've done a fantastic job. So thank you very much.
Something that we celebrate right?
Yes, great.
And I want to also welcome our guest musician here, playing beautiful clarinet. Our music this morning is going to be glorious. Thank you, Jocelyn, for your presence. Oh, Joe Allen, sorry. Did I do that wrong in the bulletin? No. Oh,
Another successful PA day. Thank you for all of the helpers. Just a thank you again to everyone who supported my nephew Stephen in buying the popcorn. The popcorn will be here next Sunday. And we raised over $3,000. And he's going to receive a scholarship and a $150 prepaid visa and the venture. So thanks for everyone's help.
Okay, 2 birthdays, granddaughter and a grandson. And most of all, Dawn's one.
Brian Lawrence for my stepson's birthday, and he took us for a holiday to his place in Abilene for a weekend. It was just marvelous. Thank you.
Thankful that I'm not preaching again. My daughter had a birthday.
And what are you doing still here, Missy? Let's all pray for a good week for the Sawyer family, shall we? Okay. Shall we sing?
we give thanks for our sacred fire, the Christ candle, the living flame that is the symbol of God's presence in our midst. God's presence, mysterious presence, who's alive within us, alive between us, and alive in the whole universe, holding everything together, and has been in this place, in this land, and these waters since time immemorial. And for this, we give God thanks. All will share equally in the earth's abundance.
All will care for the sick and the weak and the old.
All will nourish the young.
All will cherish life's creatures.
All will live with respect in creation.
Holy God, wisdom in our midst, we cherish your presence with us. We have gathered to celebrate the reign of Christ.
So in case you haven't figured it out, this is Reign of Christ Sunday. Our opening hymn is a well-known hymn, Crown Him with Many Crowns, 211 in Voices United. Let us stand. Join me up here so we can see you. So we're going to say the Lord's Prayer together. Those of you who have learned the signs, Krista is going to sign it while I say it. Sorry? Well, they can follow with you, right? Okay. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, myself set up. I have to run and get my music. Sorry.
And while Meg's getting her music, of course, this piece, Where is the Room, is one of the pieces from the cantata that we're doing this evening. We have all fallen in love with the music. The words were all written by a woman from New Zealand. Strong connections with the Presbyterian Church. Her husband used to be moderator of the New Zealand Presbyterian Church. And they're just wonderful, wonderful words. And so Karen's going to give you just a taste of Where is the Room, or we all are.
Is my mic turned off? No. Okay, I better turn it on. Yes, I'm going to do that.
We're going to thank, we pulled in one of our ringers for tonight. David Graham was in the back there. Really, we're glad that he's still on this morning. He's going to talk to you himself better this morning.
Just switch it up.
I need you to pay really close attention to me, all right? You can tell I've been at the PA game. I'm a little bossier. Okay. What I have here is some baby oil and a container, all right? And what I want to tell you is that we're Christians, right? We're all Christians, and what would you say is the most obvious, the most important sign or symbol or image for being a Christian? The cross. You got it. Go like this. A lot of people who are Christians cross themselves, right? The cross is a very ancient symbol, long before Jesus was crucified on a tree, which we call a cross. It was a symbol in ancient times of life. So when the Christians started to tell the story about Jesus dying on a cross, they were saying, he didn't die. He did die, but he didn't end. He was put to death on life. He is alive. It's a sign of life. It's kind of like the Christians tricked the Romans. So we make the sign of the cross something very important that we do, and I'm going to give each of you a sign of the cross on your forehead, all right? Would that be all right? This is baby oil. All of you have had baby oil. It's not anything terrible. It's just a little bit of baby oil. Here we go. And, oh yeah, I got some there. Yeah. Grease might be difficult to get off, but anyway. May I put a sign of a cross on you? Come on, Adam. Okay, I did this when you were a little baby. I did it with water. Here you go. You can sign yourself. Just get a little bit of oil and put the sign on your forehead. Yeah, you do it, May. It's a sign of the life that God has given you and the life that Jesus gives us. The life that's all around, a gift from God. And they thought they killed Jesus. Ha! Yeah, here you go. The sign of the cross on your forehead. Thank you. Yeah, you'll be good at it. Here. Oliver, come here. You have to have a sign of the cross on your forehead. You don't want one? How about on your hand? Would your hand be okay? Okay, you do it on your hand. Eric is doing it on his hand. You want to do it on your hand? You don't want a sign of the cross? Okay. You don't have to. I'm not going to be like people that make you. Okay, I'm going to sign myself. Let's all stand. You have work to do, boys and girls. Today is the day when we're celebrating, when we're practicing the pageant. And you have lots of work because we have to tell the story about Jesus being born, right? So here, hold my hand. Come here, Eric, Oliver, come and join the prayer circle. Alan. There we go. Okay. Everyone, we are a circle of young Christians. Me too. I'm pretty young. So let's just say a little prayer. Loving God, thank you for the sign of life. Thank you for Jesus. Help us to be very attentive at our pageant. Very attentive at our pageant. It's a grown-up word, sorry. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. Remember your lines.
When they came to the place called the Skull, there they crucified him, along with the criminals, one on his right and the other on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing." And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. The people stood watching, and the rulers even sneered at him. They said, "He saved others. Let him save himself, if he is the Christ of God, the chosen one." The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine and vinegar, and they said, if you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There was a written notice above him, which read, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God," he said, "since you are under the same sentence? We are punished with justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus answered, "I tell you the truth. Today you will be with me in paradise." Here end of the lesson.
Thanks be to God. And now we're going to sing our hymn of the month. Of course, the word reign is all about the rule of God, or God's way being the way that we follow. Of course, you saw the little joke on the sign. How many of you saw this joke on the sign? How many of you read the sign outside there? It says, "Rain, R-A-I-N." But of course, that's the way most children, including Sam Langman, would hear it. Right? The rain of God. Oh, you mean the rain, the pouring rain. Anyway, we're going to talk about, we're going to sing a song about Jesus reigning in our hearts. Let's stand. Lord Jesus, reign in our hearts this day and this year. Amen. You know that joke that Sam put up on our sign about rain, it's a play on words, of course. But it is the way most children hear it. And when I was in charge of children's time, kind of like Krista, in my home congregation, and it was Rain Christ Sunday, I decided we would make rain. That would be a fun thing to do with a word like that and with the children, and we could have fun with it. So we made rain, the way you start with rubbing your hands, and then you do, I won't do it right now, but you can make a wonderful storm and then bring it back, and it's a lot of fun. There was a lady in the choir right behind me, and she expressed her disapproval in no uncertain terms. She had her arms like that, and she was just, So I've always, I was told by my family, because she was behind me, I was totally unaware of her disapproval throughout the storm. But I suppose she took it as lacking in respect and dignity, and the meaning of the reign of Christ, or the festival, the feast of Christ the King. It was too light-hearted. So there you go, Sam. You and I are both disapproved of by the lady in the choir. But I felt like we were kindred spirits.
Laura Lee Kiziko said I could do it.
Oh. Do it, Sam. Do it. Let's see what the minister says. So anyway, we're very close to Advent. Next Sunday is the beginning of Advent. It's also the day of the Santa Claus parade in Elmvale. So the issues around how we celebrate Advent in conjunction with Santa Claus and Christmas presents and shopping and all of the glitter and wonderful stuff around Christmas really comes to the fore. And here we are on Rain, we're at the culmination of the year that we live with the Gospel Luke. And so the story that was chosen by the lectionary for this Sunday, when we celebrate the reign, the fact that we are followers of Jesus and he rules in our lives, at least we hope he does, and we try to follow Jesus. We try to live according to his way. Here we are, and we're talking about his death on the cross. That's the story we're given. And of course, you could see the reason behind their choice of that lection because of that little moment with the criminal, where he says, this day you will be with me in paradise. And of course, most of us interpret that to mean in the life beyond, in heaven. Paradise is somewhere else. But what we see, though, on the cross, in that scene provided by the Gospel of Luke, and it's in all the Gospels, not a single Gospel leaves it out or lessens it. They all have different details, but they take up a major portion of the telling of the story of Jesus. And what we see in the midst of excruciating pain, we see a person who's bullied and jeered and humiliated right up to the very end. He's crowned with a crown of thorns, which causes blood, and it's bloody and gory and hurtful and painful. He's a victim of what in our modern day we would call a lynching, a kind of a state-sanctioned, society-sanctioned public execution. And he, what was his crime? Nonviolent resistance to the power of the Roman Empire. A power, by the way, which we've seen the Roman Empire collapse, but there have been lots of other empires since then. Empire has never left us, and that kind of power, that dominating power, has never left us. And right now in our world, it is a global force that has all of us in its greedy grip. It's a greedy grip. And what we see on who, despite all of this suffering, is able to speak to the criminal by his side about paradise. Advent's a time of year in the Christian year when we ponder the reality that our King died. The child of promise that we celebrate at Christmas was crucified. It is a time we are provided for pondering the profound mystery of the birth and death of Jesus. Oh yes, and let's not forget the life of Jesus, the life and teachings of Jesus. He died an excruciating death. And Christians have been pondering the meaning of this ever since. Is Jesus the King of the afterlife? Is that the paradise of which he spoke? And is that the purpose of our lives on earth, to live out our earthly existence as best as we can so that we can join him in heaven when we die? Is earth simply some kind of testing ground for human beings? Will they behave well or will they behave badly? What did the first Christians believe? The very first ones, those who lived through all of these events as live events, those who saw, who heard Jesus, lived with him, saw him being crucified, or those who were children or descendants of the very first Christians who heard stories, long before the scriptures were written, the text that we have as the New Testament. They would have heard stories around a meal, around a gathering time. The child Jesus died a violent death on a cross when he was still a young man. Each of the Gospels tells us about this death at great length. And here, on the day when we celebrate the culmination of the Christian year, the Feast of Christ, the King, or the Reign of Christ, as we prefer to call it now, we are reminded of this death again. It seems that this death is very important, maybe even central. Jesus was sent by God, we are told, to die for us. It's what we hear in many of our Christmas carols, which we'll be singing very soon. But I ask you, is this the whole story? Is this the primary meaning of the birth of Jesus Christ? Recently, two theologians wrote a book. They wrote it together about the meaning of the death of Jesus, and it was called Proverbs of Ashes: Violence, Redemptive Suffering, and the Search for What Saves Us. What is it about the death of Jesus that saves us? And while they expressed concern about the impacts upon human history of the idea of redemptive violence, especially because they were looking at the escalating phenomenon of domestic violence in our world, they didn't like the story, but they did not question that the violent death of Jesus was at the very heart of Christianity. As a follow-up to this book, they went on a tour, and they came up with this book, which I have been reading. I haven't finished it. It's called Saving Paradise: How Christianity Traded Love of This World for Crucifixion and Empire. Their thesis is, by hallowing the redemptive violence of the crucifixion, we justify empire, we justify war, we justify death as a means to an end. So, as a follow-up, they went looking for art, because they knew that the early Christians were not illiterate people. They didn't read and write. They would have been surrounded by art, images of their belief. And so they were looking for images. How did the early Christians present the death of Jesus, the crucifixion. How did they perceive it? And to their amazement, no images of the death were to be found in any of the ancient places where our faith ancestors worshipped. What? Wherever they found images of the cross, figures were always magnificently clothed and adorned. It was the resurrected Christ. And yes, there were numerous depictions of paradise. And not a paradise way up there in heaven, some distant place, but paradise as a realm on earth, a lush and glorious earthly beauty. On earth as it is in heaven, we pray. These were the images that they were depicting. The very earliest image of a suffering Christ, you know, the crucifix with the dying man on the cross, the very earliest that they could find was in Europe in the 10th century, in a part of the world where the Emperor Charlemagne was known to have conquered a people and then forced them to convert to Christianity at the end of a sword. You convert or you die. You become a Christian or you die. And the first sentence in their book, which I will read to you, the first sentence, the very first sentence, the prologue. It took Jesus 1,000 years to die. Images of his corpse did not appear in churches until the 10th century. Why not? Well, this question sent us out on a 5-year pilgrimage that led to this book, Saving Paradise. Apparently, salvation comes with the birth, the life, and the resurrected life beyond death, despite the death. We certainly do find meaning, and there is great meaning in the death, and we sing about it, we learn about it. It's mostly the story that we live with. But it's not the only meaning. It's not the only meaning, and when it's the only meaning, and especially the meaning that we sing about when we celebrate the birth, little Margaret, that's me, I was little Margaret. I just couldn't understand it. I don't know why. We were celebrating the death of Jesus when we just had a little baby born. So we sang one of the pieces from the Christmas cantata that we're going to do tonight. It's happening here at St. John's. I hope all of you will be coming. The lyrics encourage us to spend some time pondering the birth of Jesus before we hasten to find its meaning in his death. I'm not saying there isn't meaning in his death. I am saying that we're missing so much of the meaning in his birth and in God becoming human, an earth creature. Some of the lyrics that we sang just now, let the Christ child have space. Let the Christ have space. At the heart of living, center for birth's new breathing, cradle for hope and peace. Peace, child, in the sleep of the night, in the dark before light, you come. In the silence of stars and the violence of wars, Savior, your name. Peace, child. To the road and the storm, to the gun and the bomb you come. Through the hate and the hurt, through the hunger and the dirt, bearing a dream. Peace, child. To our dark and our sleep, to the conflict we reap, now come.
Be your dream born alive, held in hope, wrapped in love, God's true shalom. Come, Lord Jesus, be our King. Be born in us this year. Let us bring our offerings to God. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so much in the habit. Please, let us hear. And I wanted to say, the Huron Carol is, that's what we have, right? Yes. It's such a wonderful example of an attempt to tell the story of the birth in a completely different culture. And I think it's still appropriate that we hear it now. Thank you.
If you hear it today and you can think of somebody else that will appreciate it, Joellen will be performing it at the Serenata concert next Sunday, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And, or you know somebody that can't go out to see concerts in the evening here. Literally bringing all the bells and now whistles, we're bringing the kazoos, plus
to live with joy. And out of all of the gifts that we've received, we bring our offerings to God. We'll take up the offering now. Gracious God, we give you thanks for all that you give. Receive these gifts as a sign of our desire to be a part of your world of peace and hope and love and justice in our world. In Jesus' name, amen. Yes, please be seated, and we're going to pray together, but we're going to pray in the form of singing a hymn, one that we learned the last time we had a round of hymns of the month. It's called O Ancient Love, but the chorus is Within Our Hearts Be Born. And I invite you to think right now, to hold in your hearts and minds the whole world. Think of yourself. Think of your close family. Think of your friends and your community. And then take it out into the whole wide world. Knowing that everything is connected and that we come from an ancient love that is the beginning of it all. And it is to that ancient one that we pray. Let us pray. on to sing our closing hymn, I want to just say some words about life and about birth. We are aware that Liz has just lost a baby who was born prematurely and has passed into, I believe, the life beyond death, the paradise with God. And right here with us, we have a baby about to be born, Robin, who's weeping. It's a very, very tender and fragile thing. And I'm also aware that there are many, many of us that are in touch with and love and care for people who are close to being born into the life beyond. It's a way of talking about dying, but we're always in this state of fragility, and I just want you all to know in the deepest place that you are loved, you are held, you are cared for, in whatever state you find yourself. And that little baby, little Maverick, is enjoying the presence of God. I believe that. So, with that in mind, we're going to sing, and we're not going to sing Jesus Shall Reign. I went to change things and didn't let Bob know. And we have a wonderful, so 2, 1, 3. So the song, what we're going to sing is not what's up here, Jesus Shall Reign Wherever the Sun. That's what I wanted to do. But we're not going to do that. Sam, I'm sorry, I should have told you. I'm going to ask you to turn to your hymn books. Voices United 213. It's another good hymn for Reign of Christ Sunday. We'll sing the first 3 verses, then we'll have the benediction and sing the last verse. Once you've found it, let us stand. knowing that the Spirit of God is behind us, to encourage us, beside us, to accompany us, over us, to watch over us, ahead of us, to lead us, and within us, to give us peace. In
Wednesday night.
Wednesday night.
Yeah. I hope we're on first because you got a fair job right now.
Still need the tip jar here.